Welcome to Got the Fire, because we got the fire, and I want to welcome Neal Brown, my main man Neal Brown, founder of some of Indianapolis' most iconic, influential restaurants, everything from Pizzology to Libertine to Stella to Moon Rabbit to Ukiyo, and the soon-to-come Midday All Day opening Midtown All Day opening in September.
God, you're gonna put me on the spot. Probably spring. Let's go with spring.
You're also a James Beard Award nominee. You're a founder of Dig In. You're a music aficionado. You've always got great music in your restaurants.
Yeah, I like
and dare I say, Chief Executive Officer of Badassery?
Depending on who you ask.
Okay.
If you ask my children, probably not.
Ambassador for Indianapolis. So we brought Neal here today because many of you in our audience are restaurant marketing people. We have a ton of clients in the restaurant space. We love restaurants, and so we thought, who else would to bring to the table to sometimes a team behind him, sometimes he's a one-man show, Neal Brown. So thanks for coming on.
Of course, thanks for having me.
The first question is, what's the first step with any platform, whether it's a social media platform, other platforms, whatever? What's the first step in getting started for a restaurant?
Well, you have to secure, for a restaurant, you have to secure the space, right? You have to secure the name as best you can and make it relevant to the property, right? So literally before I even think about permanent names, I go online, I make sure that those properties are available. So that is the first thing. And then the second thing, of course, is understanding who you're talking to.
So knowing the audience.
For sure. You have to know not only who your audience is socially, you have to know who your audience is at the restaurant property. And that's probably even more important, frankly.
Got it. Now, let me ask you this. You're a person.
I am a person.
What are your favorite platforms in terms of the restaurant and then in terms of you personally?
They've become the same. Instagram is easily my favorite, and I think most chefs would say the same thing because it's so hyper visual. We work in you eat with your eyes first. That's a real thing. We actually create with our eyes, maybe not first, but we do sort of create with our eyes, and so we put a lot of effort into making things look beautiful. And so what a platform that is to sort of demonstrate that. And, so yeah, Instagram is our favorite, and then of course from a strictly an advertising standpoint, Facebook is right behind it, and maybe even equal to it.
And so it's interesting in terms of a segue. What's your position as a co-founder of restaurants, as a chef, as a diner? What's your position on patrons, customers taking photos at the restaurant?
So it's changed over the years. I used to not like it, because I felt like we were losing control of our brand, right? We were losing control of the way that people perceived us as a company. Since I've kind of done a 180 on that, and now what I do is I use it as an example to all the chefs to say, look, these people are going to capture everything you do. The time, this is the space we exist in. Make sure every dish looks great, because if it doesn't, I'm going to see it online.
It's like 24/7 quality control.
It is, and it's another layer of accountability. You can't, unfortunately, police the quality of the photo. That's not up to us. But you can police the quality of the subject, right? And so we sort of talk about that. So yeah, other than the fact that it bothers me that someone will literally stop before they start to eat their food and take a photograph of it. That's probably the only thing that bothers me about that these days, is that their food's getting cold and it's not the way it should be. But look, it's your food. You're paying for it, so enjoy it. Consume it in whatever way you want to consume it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't stress about it anymore. I used to quite a bit.
And going back to Facebook and the fact that from an ad standpoint it's invaluable. I remember reading, that Messenger ads were coming, but the first Messenger ad I got was from Moon Rabbit Ramen.
That's wild.
And
Yeah,
that was the
that's
first
so
one,
interesting.
and I actually went through the questions, and I was directed to talk to someone, and we did a booking. There's 4 people, but
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I mean, that's how easy Facebook has made it to advertise on their platform, because I can assure you that likely wasn't intentional. It was just a button we clicked that said this is where we want to be.
yeah.
I run lots of ads, and
Yeah.
so that was probably just one of the times, and I do all of that
Yeah.
in-house. So.
And I think that's amazing for many of you who don't understand the complexity of Facebook ads. And Neal, you have a mind for technical, clearly, because you're looking at the audience, you're looking at affinities, you're looking at demographics, you're looking at behavior. There's all kinds of things you're looking at.
I looked at I got a report yesterday, and I was looking at it, and for $3.57, we reached 14,000 people. Now, qualitatively, I'm not sure how what the quality of that sort of what we would call touch point was, but for $3 and some cents to reach 14,000 people.
Yeah, I think that's pretty badass.
That's a pretty good return for $3.57, right?
It is.
Yeah. No matter the level.
What we're telling all our clients is you've got to check out video, because video is you're looking at 1 to 4 cents for a partial view or a full view, and you just can't get that anywhere else.
You can't get it anywhere else. We're probably behind the curve on video. It's something we probably should be doing better.
Very interesting, my friend. Now, my next question is influencers. Recently when you did the formal opening of Ukiyo, you had a bunch of influencers, some digital influencers, social influencers, some like traditional influencers. How did that go? And what do you think? What would you advise other restaurant owners?
Yeah, so interesting question, and I can give you some real life sort of analysis on this. When we let's step back.
Okay.
When we rebranded Pizzology on Mass Ave to Stella, I believe, and Stella has since closed. I believe that one of the biggest missteps that we made was we weren't aggressive enough in our pre-opening marketing. When we opened Stella, there were a lot of restaurant closings, and they were kind of dominating the local food scene media, frankly.
I remember that.
It seemed like every week you were reading about a restaurant that was closing, and I didn't see it then, but I saw it. You get real introspective, right, when you're closing a restaurant. But I looked back and I was like, man, that was a miss for us. And so when we were opening Ukiyo, the first thing I wanted to achieve was a splash, which I've literally never done in the past. It was the first time. It used to be a situation where you build it and they will come. Those days are over. And so we sort of we made a very concerted effort to reach out to as many social influencers locally as we could, get them involved, and I think it made an enormous difference. It was a great event, first of all. I think we got to tell our story on our terms, which was important. It's always important to me, as you know. I'm vocal. And so to sort of have control over being able to tell our story was important to me. And so it achieved that. And hey, Ukiyo is still in business, so and with a bright future, I think.
And I'm going to take a step to the side for 2 things. Did you have any idea that Moon Rabbit Ramen was going to be such a smash hit?
No, and that's a whole different story. But no, I didn't. I had no intention of doing ramen at Ukiyo. And so, I was convinced by a young cook who really has a passion for ramen to do ramen. And so we sort of embarked on ramen, and we're glad we did. It's actually Moon Rabbit is branded as Moon Rabbit because I feel like it has so much potential as a standalone brand. Mm-hmm. Down the road, we will likely be investing more into that brand alone.
Yeah.
Whereas Ukiyo will likely be a one-off. It'll be sort of my creative expression, Chef Roby's sort of playground as well. Our sort of place to play around, Moon Rabbit likely has scalability.
So it's interesting to me when I think of the BMW line. They brought the Mini on to be a entry-level vehicle into the brand. right?
Yeah.
But Mini blew up, and then many people like myself who never left Mini. I think that's what's going to happen with Moon Rabbit. It's like Moon Rabbit.
I hope you're right.
Yeah.
I hope you're right, and I think that's accurate.
Let's take a quick drink to our fallen brother Anthony Bourdain.
Oh,
Thanks to Dusty, one of our amazing clients, for bringing in some mulberry sours.
Oh yeah, these are great. What is
That's
this?
actually preposterous.
Preposterous.
Yeah, collaboration with Cascade out in Oregon.
It's preposterously good.
Very good. So
That was hard for me to say, and I'm not even drunk.
yeah. So my question to you is, word of mouth.
It's really good.
How important is it? Because we have all these, everyone wants to measure everything. Everyone wants to do digital things. But how important is social in terms of word of mouth and word of mouth in general? Like, how does it affect?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think you can ever replace it, right? I think the internet has done a really good job of creating a word of mouth facsimile. But I don't think you can ever replace you and I sitting over lunch and eating something and me saying, man, you should try this taco up the street that I had the other day, and where you can like talk about the taco. You can see the passion in someone's face when they're talking about this great taco,
Yeah.
So I don't think it'll ever be replaced. And for us, it's always the most important thing. I measure some of our restaurant's successes on the amount of regulars that we have. If we have a good core of regulars, we know that we are doing something right. We're building our tribe, and we're doing that slowly, and those regulars are that tribe. When you have a good core of regulars, those people become sort of your ambassadors of your brand. And Pizzology is I can't give a better example than Pizzology. And so on certain nights, we have the same people that are sitting at the bar at Pizzology every single night. And they all know Tom. They all know our chef, Paul. And, there's equity there. Those people have equity in that company. And when they're invested like that, they're out telling their friends.
Cheers on steroids.
Yeah, it is. And you just know you're doing something right. It's validation. And it's the beautiful thing about that is it's validation on just about every level. The staff sees it, so they are instantly rewarded by seeing these people coming back time and time again. That is something that it's one of those intangibles, that that they sort of find value in. They don't even know maybe that they find value in it, but they see them coming back and they know they're doing a good job.
This leads me to my next question. I've heard a couple places who talk about it's all about the food. There's not a whole lot of emphasis on the environment. There's not a whole lot of emphasis on presentation, even on service sometimes. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on, I know that I've read this before from you, and I am similarly vocal on overall experience and how that relates to word of mouth and why restaurant owners and operators should pay so much attention to overall experience. It doesn't have to be fancy, but the overall experience should be cohesive.
For sure. I mean, I think as part of the restaurant renaissance that we've gone through, I know that if you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, I would have had a different answer. And I would have said, yeah, it's all about the food, because then I was a chef. I was a sort of a chef in the purest sense of the word. Now, it's short-sighted and it's not sustainable. I think it's fine when I see young chefs, and I see a lot of them that want to do their own thing and say, well, it's all about the food. I actually encourage them to think that way, but I would also encourage them to grow and to look outside of that perspective at some point in their career, because it's not all about the food.
Right.
It's about so much more.
I remember Renee Wilmuth, blogger, food critic, all-around amazing food person, saying that in the early days, and indeed, early days meaning like early 2000s. So it's not all about the food; it's about the experience. And I see her having that same argument, on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I mean, some places it is all about the food, right? I mean, I used the example of a taco a little bit ago. I mean, there are places where you just go just to get the taco. You don't care about the service. You don't care about the ambiance. In fact,
that is the experience.
Maybe the anti-ambiance is part of the experience, right? And so, but it's still an experience, right? Right? It's still an experience. So
I'll stand and have tacos every day, no problem.
Yeah, for sure. I've eaten tacos under a highway in Mexico City, and it was probably the best taco I've ever had. It also made me really sick. Really sick.
Well, turtle tacos are not all that they're.
Highway tacos.
Highway tacos.
But yeah, I think that I think everyone's opinion of what a restaurant is these days has changed. It's too competitive. It is an experience. You know, I say to my team all the time, we compete with everything. We're not just competing with other restaurants. We compete with the backyard barbecue. We compete with your friends. Yeah. We compete with sporting events. We compete with anything.
I just saw an article yesterday about Generation Z having a preference for takeout and how that's a nightmare for some restaurants because they don't want their food carried out.
Yeah, well, they better
right?
They better get wise.
Because you can't tell someone like don't take ramen out because you know it's not going to travel well. It's like, hey, screw it. If I'm buying the ramen and I don't mind it degrading by 14.2%.
I've had this conversation many times using ramen as that example. You know, Pizzology, in the early days of Pizzology, we actually didn't carry out Pizzology. That was that phase where I was still very much a chef, right?
Perfectionist, yeah.
Yeah, and you want people to experience your food the way that you want them to experience it, and that's not realistic. It's just not the way people eat these days.
So one might say that you're very evolved in your practice of contention.
Wait a minute. You just used a lot of words. Very involved.
Evolved.
Evolved.
You're a sophisticated, contentious guy sometimes. And I think it's mostly on social because everyone knows like Neal Brown in person is amazing, but he's going to call you out on social.
I used to quite a bit. And then I started having banks as partners, and those banks follow me on social media, and so I started washing my ass a little bit.
But I mean, someone's got to do it. So,
yeah.
So when it comes to contention, right? Whether it's a corporate restaurant or whether it's a tiny independent restaurant, right? Is contention useful for marketing, right?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's productive, you know, I think, I don't think it needs to be angry. I think as long as it's, the odd thing is, Duncan, I'm sitting here thinking about this. I called out a chef this morning on Instagram, a very, very famous chef. And we actually had like some words on Instagram. And my point to him was that everything he said in this post about knowing your meat and like actually seeing your meat sort of being killed and sort of having a deep respect for this, he posted this and I said, I agree with everything you said. I just don't agree with how you said it. And it was just that he was impassioned. He was very, very passionate about it, but it sounded almost angry. And I was like, you're trying to get people to understand your point of view, but the tone isn't going to help you do that. So yeah, I think I've come full circle because I used to be that guy. I think I was very impassioned about sort of the things that I believed in, and at some point I think you understand that you can bring along people that you want to bring along, or some people that you want to bring along, and others you just can't.
So maybe in your slightly younger days you were more like elemental, like sushi.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Now you're more like an aged Italian meat.
Full
of nuance.
Can we use wine as an example?
Not Italian meat. Sorry, he's more like Italian wine.
Italian wine would be better. Yeah. I like Italian meat too, though.
So, who do you follow, on social media?
Man, I get a lot of shit for this. So,
Hey, listen up.
So I consume social media differently than I sort of push it out, I guess. So I use social media to follow people that that inspire me, frankly. I don't necessarily, it's not a social experience for me. It's very much an educational experience for me. I only use social media to look through, to be inspired, so I follow lots of photographers, I follow lots of architects, I follow obviously lots of chefs, almost all creative people, people that are out there creating something. And so I get a lot of pushback on that because people are like, well, why don't you follow me on social media? And I just kind of say that's because that's not how I consume it. I don't consume it to be people's sort of friend. I understand that people want to do that, but I do it to be inspired and to sort of be educated and learn something. So that's the only reason I don't follow more people.
Well, that's Neal Brown personally.
That's just personally. Yeah, that's just personally. Professionally, I would say the same thing. It's just I want to follow. In fact, on our newer restaurants profiles, I don't follow anyone. I've just started to not follow anyone. So I know that that's probably not a great practice, but it sure helps keep those things clean. And I haven't seen any adverse effects thus far from that. Ukiyo's got a couple thousand followers in 6 months. All organic, by the way. We've done a little promotion to try to get people to come our way, but and that's without following anyone. So again, I think finding our tribe, finding our people, and our core, and really sort of talking to them.
So when it comes to this mix, right? You're managing your channels, and you're posting stuff, and you're sharing things, and you're acknowledging comments, and you're running ads, and you're doing influencer work. What's the crux? Like, what is the hardest piece of it all?
Managing it all.
Managing it all. So it's the sheer load, and is there fatigue?
Yeah, there is fatigue for sure. In fact, my days are numbered on that. I've been told for a long time that you should do your own social media because your voice is so strong that it adds value for you. And I've heard that time and time again from friends that are in marketing and etc. I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. I'm finding that there are other ways that I like to spend my time aside from making posts. But today I made a post. I thought it was a pretty good one, and so there are times when I feel passionate about it. So if I do bring on a firm to do it, I will always want to have a little interjection in there where I can still use my voice to sort of bring some authenticity to that platform. But yeah, those days are probably coming to an end for me.
Life.
Yes.
So,
life.
2 more questions. Second last question. What's something about you that not a lot of people know? I mean, you don't have to tell us about your birthmarks, but
I don't have any. I don't think. I don't think I have any. Although my wife might know about one that I don't know about. That was creepy. Sorry. Something that not a lot of people know about me. I am hyper ADHD. I have very, very serious ADHD, and it's been diagnosed. It's not. I don't just say that about myself. So for me, focus is a very, very difficult thing. And I think a lot of times, I think sometimes that doesn't play out well for me. I focus on something, and then I'm done with it, and then I have to move on to the next thing, and I focus on it, and I move on. And I think sometimes that doesn't play well, especially on social media.
Yeah, well, you're a visionary. There's so many things to focus on.
Gosh, I know that's a lot of pressure.
Our colleague Chad told me that instead of maintaining really long lists, I should only focus on 3 things per week.
Yeah,
and that's really nice when I hit Wednesday and I've hit all 3, then I go to the alley cat.
You just take the rest of the week off? Chad. All right, I'm going to put Chad's strategy.
Always, anyone that's watching this, always remember, because everyone on the Firebelly team knows this, if you want sage advice given humbly, at Chad Richards.
Is that right?
That's right. So one last thing for the audience. One piece of advice for people in restaurant marketing, whether it's a a young male or female running a social media program for a restaurant somewhere, or it's an owner, or it's a corporation, whatever, what's one parting piece of advice?
It'd be the same advice I gave my son yesterday when he told me that he wants to be YouTube famous. I said, give people a reason to come to seek you out. You know, you can't just be famous because you want to be famous. Give people a reason to seek out what you have to say. And I think that applies really to just about anyone. Have a point of view, and be able to articulate it in a way that impassions people, you know. So that would be my advice.
Also, you have maybe the honor or the dubious distinction of being the first guest on this show.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What
It's always been Taylor and I. Taylor's sitting over there. Taylor, say hi!
Hi.
What do you guys talk about? Just marketing?
Yeah, you know, we have some fun with it. And what's your favorite record at the moment?
Oh my God. The new Coltrane that just came out with all the B-sides. Yeah, I'm listening to that now. I haven't even listened to the new Drake. So.
Yeah, he just beat Michael Jackson.
Is that right?
More number one hits on one record, yeah.
I have listened to the new Kanye. I like the new Kanye. I think he's still brilliant. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, we're thinking about calling this Got the Fire, so tell us what you think. And thank you so much to all the members of the team. Lexi behind the camera, Taylor pulling everything together, she's a producer, Kelly transcribing secret things, Dusty, our client from Upland Brewery, brought us beer to drink, and of course Neal Brown, thank you so much.
Thanks for
It's been
applying
great. Amazing!
makeup.
Woo! That's a wrap.